Hi everyone and welcome back for a new episode. So this is already the fifth edition. Thanks for joining us again. So we have a pretty good agenda today. As you may have guessed from the trailer we just saw, we're going to be discussing about mobile tracking, and we have some pretty good guests to discuss about it. So first, we're going to have Gabriel, who is going to talk about his research on the Xiaomi phones. That's pretty interesting. So he found out that a lot of the data was actually being exfiltrated. So that's pretty cool. And then we're going to have Kostin, who is going to be discussing about tracking mobile tracker. It's kind of a follow-up of his previous presentation. And actually, today's theme is ID. So thanks again, Kostin, for suggesting the theme, and something. If you guys have any speakers you would like to see, or if you've read a good blog post, like do not hesitate to talk about it. And after, we're gonna have a panel. So with Gabriel, Kostin, and Elliot. Obviously, that's not his real name, as you have seen. It's the Mr. Robot alias, but he's French. He's a French security researcher. And last but not least, we're gonna have Tim Baker from Theory, who's going to be talking about his last blog post, where he was explaining how he's escaping the Chrome sandbox, which is actually like pretty cool too. And yeah, so same thing. If you're not on the Discord already, you're more than welcome to join it. We're around 300 people now, I think. So since the IRC channel fell through, like Discord has been a pretty reliable alternative since then, and much easier to join. And yeah, so just to re-explain some of the things from last time, if you want to donate through MSF, you can still go on our website, and there's a donate button that goes straight to MSF whenever you click on it. So you can make a donation there. And the agenda obviously is on the website. And yeah, if you have been here like a few times already, like I'm pretty sure you're very familiar with the format. If you want to tweet anything about the show, don't forget to use the hashtag OPCOD2020. And yeah, so if you have any questions, you can post them live, and usually at the end of the presentation I will take your questions and ask the speaker the questions. And if you have recommendations or suggestions for future editions, yeah, don't hesitate to give any of them. So that's pretty much it for now, as the introduction is pretty much the same as usual. So I'm really looking forward to this session, because as you may have seen, like because we're in May now, almost in June, there is more and more applications being launched by a bunch of governments to track people with COVID-19. So that's definitely something to look at. But before we talk about this, like Gabriel's presentation is pretty good, because it's basically telling you, like, even though everyone is panicking and talking about those like COVID-19 apps that we need to install, well, we should not wait for that to start to wonder if our phone is acting weirdly or not as it should be. Yeah, so if you can hear me, yeah, Gab, you can start sharing your screen, and yeah, then we'll launch the transition. So, but yeah, if you have any questions, anything, guys, don't hesitate. And let me move this here up. Okay.
Hello, fellow humans. Sorry, Zoom is acting up a bit. Let me share my screen again. Okay. All right. Nice. Sorry for the minor disruptions. Yeah, so today we're going to talk about cheap Android phones and my experience in acquiring them and how they acquired me in the end. So I'm gonna do a small introduction then for those guys who are not that familiar with me. I just started working in this industry not that much time away. I'm pretty fresh in the industry. I started by hacking the public transit system in Romania at some point, and then when I discovered that my free fares are up, I turned my eyes on my car and found out that it knew way more about me than I knew about myself. Long story short, it logged everything I was doing, how I was driving, contacts, whatever, just like the actor that we're gonna talk about today. Now, recently I started turning hunting bots for white ops, but I still keep my eye on any privacy infringing companies. Yeah, so I decided to get a Xiaomi phone, and I mean, why get the Chinese phone, right? I mean, everybody knows that they're tracking everything, yada, yada, yada. But hey, they're pretty big. I mean, it's a privately owned company. They are the fourth biggest phone seller in the world right now. I think, yeah, they just beat Samsung on India. And speaking of India, they are the first right now when it comes to sales. They make smartphones, tablet, batteries, laptops, TV, selfie sticks, laser projectors, umbrellas. You can basically live your entire life in Xiaomi products. And as they are growing more and more, this is the graph of the market share that they have in India right now. As you can see, they're the biggest seller on the market. They have very cheap phones, very powerful phones, and I decided to go for them. And I ended up getting a Redmi Note 8. I think it's got a Snapdragon 660, 4 gigs of RAM, a pretty large battery, uh, a decent camera even, NFC, a solid display, right? I mean, what's the catch? Something was up. My spidey sense was tingling, especially because it cost like 150 pounds. So for those that don't know about it, after Android 7 including, you can no longer intercept your SSL traffic on your own phone if you're using your own certificate. So this screws up a lot of proxies and whatnot. So I got my brand new phone, rooted, installed a custom system certificate so I could inspect the traffic that was going around. And yeah, in only three hours, it sent more than 24 requests to some random server in China. Not China, but the domain was controlled, was registered in China. It's a spyware in a box. They were sucking up all the data. My Pi hole was seeing alarms going all over the place. And inside their privacy, like their EULA, I would have consented to all of that data being shared. And this kind of became the new norm. And to give you an example of what's being shared right now, I'm gonna present a small demo that I did. Sorry for the potato quality. YouTube is acting up. Anyway, when you're going incognito, at least you can't take screenshots or anything like that. So they kind of figured that out. But you can see that it's already doing a request right as I was browsing something. The page was loading up. And we have a request going right now. And this was the page that was going around in the background. Now we can get that data. Made a chef recipe already. It's already registering the DuckDuckGo query and logging it. It's logging page starts, when the page load starts, when the page load ended, and the URL that I navigated to. And it keeps going on. It's still got more stuff being sent. And this is the exact same web page that I navigated just a few seconds ago. Now, if they were logging this anonymously, let's say that this was something all right, but they didn't. They're logging using an UUID to log to track you, and they're even sending your Me account ID, but we'll get into that a bit later. Now, let's break it down a bit. I'm loading a web page in the Xiaomi, in the MIUI browser that comes pre-installed on all of the Android devices from Xiaomi. Where whenever you do any kind of event inside the browser, they send a request to their endpoint, sa.api. Whatever. SA comes from Sensor Analytics, which is a minor company that's offering analytic services, but maybe it's just a naming coincidence, who knows. And you can see that there is a base64 request going right there. Now, the domain is being registered in China, and it points to some IPs in Alibaba's cloud infrastructure. Based on your location, the data ends up somewhere at these 3 IPs, at least recently. If you're from Europe, it goes to Singapore. If you're from the States, it goes to the US. And if you're from Russia, it goes to Russia. Now, to recap it a little bit, I got a new phone with no apps installed, only the browser. They did more than 24 calls in 3 hours to their Chinese infrastructure. This is a bit worrying, so I started digging around a bit more, because this is not the end of the story. So in order to validate if this is happening in other places, I needed to find the exact piece of code that is doing this and correlate it with the request to prove that they're doing this for all of the Xiaomi devices that they have. So if you remember this slide, we're gonna use it as an example. We have the data list parameter that's being used here to log the data. I pulled the APK from the phone for the browser and decompiled it. And inside that APK, looked for the same variable, same data list. And I found it quick enough. There was only one reference. And this data list was in a function called send HTTP request. Then I took the HTTP request function and I started looking for references to it and hit another wrapper that would send the R7, use the R7 register, and put some encoded data inside. I looked for the encode data function and found it with a lot of ease. Basically, it was right there in the open, no obfuscation or whatsoever. And this is how I basically found a way to decode the data. It was just a zip being done over the JSON with all of that logged information, and then they use base64 on top of it and just send it over the wire. And after decoding it, we can look into more detail at what they're sending. It's the URL that you're visiting for any web page that you might visit inside their browser, the pre-installed browser and the default browser that's on the phone. The network type to which you're connected. But I guess this is pretty much a standard operation. Device info, like the model, screen height, width, and all of that mumbo jumbo that's usually sent by basically everybody. And this is where it gets interesting. It's an UUID that they pretend to use as an anonymization service. So they're saying that the data is anonymously sent because they use an UUID for all of this data, and they're not sending anything personal in the same request. But they also send your account ID, which is a MIUI ID, in subsequent requests, which also contain that UUID that we were seeing before. A MIUI ID is an ID that you use. You have to create if you want to do anything on the phone, like use any Xiaomi service, like their theme, their app store. So most of the users would be tempted into actually creating one and leaving it there. And they even send whenever the user is in incognito mode. Of data in the incognito mode, at least initially. Now, just a bit of backtracking and emphasis on this distinct ID that appears in a lot of places, even in incognito mode, coupled with the UUID that I was telling you about, and the fact that you cannot create a MIUI ID without your phone number or your email or your social media account. It's impossible to get one unless you send any kind of some personal information. Not to mention that, for example, if you want to unlock your bootloader on Xiaomi phones, you have to have a MIUI ID and you have to actually use a phone a bit in order to not get flagged by them that you are trying to do anything shady. Now, one last recap. Xiaomi is sending the visited URLs, your browsing history, your search engine history, your browsing behavior, like how you are scrolling around on your phone and how long the pages are taking to load and what you're seeing on the page. And all of them can be correlated to the real persona, to the real you, even though at a shallow glance, they could say that, hey, but we're sending different requests. This is false. The personal request and the requests that contain personal info and the requests that contain anonymized information overlap. So it's quite easy to figure out who is navigating those websites or who is listening to that censored music, as we're gonna see in the future slides. And this happens even in incognito mode. So they just disable sending of your MIUI ID that I was telling you about, but they still use the same UUID. So you can still get tracked. But there is even more, because this is not limited to their to only their browser. This happens system-wide inside MIUI. So I decided to just browse around and look at some news. The problem is that when you click any of the news items that they display in their news app, it's not only you that's looking at that article, it's also the comrade officer. And they could have sent like an SHA or some kind of other hash in order to, I don't know, get some kind of personal preferences when it comes to news and display any kind of smart suggestions or whatnot. But they are actually sending the title of the news item that you clicked, the name of the publication, and a lot of other data. Of course, coupled with your MIUI ID and the UUID that I was telling you about. Now, I decided to listen to some music in their application that supports offline music playing. I like my music offline. Nobody can track you when you're listening to your music offline, right? Nope. They actually send all of the songs that you're playing inside their music player that you downloaded. So don't imagine it's some kind of streaming service or whatever. No, they are sending the songs that you play and the videos that you watch in their app in real time. So, okay, like there's one more recap, but this is the last one. We have a company that's selling cheap phones that send the news you watch, the music you play offline, what are the home screen, how your home screen folders are named. And this initially I didn't notice, but remember some of the initial slides with 20% traffic, but I decrypted only a small part of it. This is how I found about that they are also tracking the name of the folders that you have on your home screen. They added some extra layers of encryption on top of that. They didn't use the same scheme, just zipping the JSON and sending it over the wire as base64. They use AES encryption with a proper IV, the key stored inside Android's key store somewhere around, and it differs from app to app and from session to session. So they really put a lot of effort into trying to hide the more invasive habits that they are doing from the prying eyes of researchers. And this is something that is on my homework list. They use more complex encryption, so I guess the data should be even spicier than all of the stuff that I presented to you. But yeah, I couldn't decrypt the other stuff that they are sending, so I just wanted to see how, if they are, all of this data is being exfiltrated on all of the other phones that they have. So I downloaded the firmware I used for 4 phones, the Xiaomi Mi 810, the K20, the Mi Mix 3, and my Note. I used a Broadly extractor and SDAT2 image in order to get a system.img file, which I then unpacked, and I pulled all of the APKs and VDEXs from the system.img. And all of them had this exact same code that I was telling you about. All of them were sending the information to their servers. So I guess it's a systematic issue. It's not limited to certain budget phones. This was present even on their flagships. And after I reported this to the press, and there was a bit of back and from with their, I don't know, PR team, I guess, that kept saying that they aren't doing anything wrong. They initially denied it vehemently. They were disappointed by the researchers investigating this. By the way, hat tip to Cyber Gibbons for having my back. After a few days, they started backing off a bit, still insisting that the users accepted their terms and conditions so they can send whatever they want, whenever they want. And finally, after a few more days, they released a patch and thanked us for our efforts. And fellow humans, I present you the patch. It's a toggle which allows you to enable or disable the enhanced incognito mode. And this is what it reads when we enable it or disable it. So if you want to go into incognito mode, what you would say that, hey, I am going to enable incognito mode and enhanced incognito mode. And that's false, because when you enhance your incognito experience, you're actually sending your data to their servers, which, by the way, is still not anonymized. It's quite a mess. And it keeps going from bad to worse, because I also have one of their Xiaomi wristbands, which I paired to a Xiaomi phone, and that was running their UI, their Android MIUI. And by our powers combined, ladies and gentlemen, I give you Captain Spyware. So you thought that the 24 requests were bad in 3 hours. We have 40 requests in, I guess, 3 minutes that send a lot of aggregated data. Let's say that some of it is not that personal, and you might need it for analyzing your sleep or whatever. But some of the requests are pretty weird. I mean, they didn't even bother obfuscating it. Do you see something weird around here? They're actually sending the app names in the clear for all of the apps that you have installed on your phone, and you granted notification access to it, even though a lot of other solutions could have been implemented, like I don't know, encrypting them a little bit. But it's not that bad, even though we're quickly turning into one of those episodes from South Park, Human Centipede, where when vendors think that every user will read an EULA, and when they click agree, it means that they can just own the user. There are phones, for example, who don't do that. See this? This is an empty log. Nothing was being sent from a phone that surprisingly is made in China as well. It's an Oppo phone. So this is an Oppo phone, guys. Be like Oppo. Oppo is not sending anything, at least blatantly in view of me to their servers. And yeah, that was it. Thank you for your time. Follow me on Twitter for any additional developments on this, and on GitHub, because I'm gonna post a write-up at some point on of all of these shenanigans that I pulled.
That's pretty cool. Thanks, Gabriel. Yeah, don't forget to send me your slides also after, so I can purge them on the actual GitHub. While we're waiting for some questions from the chat, So when did you publish that research again? Was it like a month, 2 months ago?
I contacted a reporter about this 3 weeks ago.
Okay. Oh wow.
Beginning of May, I think.
Yeah. And did you hear any feedback so far from like from vendors and like from journalists or?
Yeah, the news spread like wildfire. There were, let's say, divisive views. Some of them were saying, hey, everybody's doing that. Well, in that case, I present you whataboutism, which is a pretty weak way of arguing against something. While others were pretty revolted on the privacy infringements that Xiaomi is doing.
Yeah, definitely that's pretty crazy if you think about it. Is this the only vendor you looked at so far, or did you look at other like I would say like I don't want to say Asian vendors, but like non vendors, because like Xiaomi is pretty big in terms of market share, right? I think they're also like super popular
Yes.
in Africa, even in Europe. I mean, they provide like, or just talking about it
Yes.
in the chat, no, like really good hardware for the price, but I guess you pay with your data. No, it makes more sense, you know?
Yeah. I mean, when when a product is free, you are the product.
Yeah.
Yes, I did look. This is the first thing that I do when I get a new phone. And I've noticed that Lenovo is doing something along these lines as well, sending your email correlated with the apps that you install and uninstall from your phone in real time. But back then, I didn't have that much time to focus on things like this.
Yeah, I see. And someone is asking actually, do you have the list of all the domain names that Xiaomi is connecting to so they can add them to like a sync hole? I mean, a pi hole?
Yes, I think that Costin already compiled a list of domains that you can just plug into pi holes.
And
it's somewhere buried in Twitter.
Okay, okay. You know, by the way, like whenever you we put the slides on GitHub if you want, you know, because it's just like a GitHub, you can just create a .md file and put the list of domains there if you want, you know, to centralize the information.
Definitely.
Because there's definitely a lot of people like using this. And out of curiosity, do you have any idea of what they do with the data? Do they even monetize it in some way, or is it just like straight like intelligence that they're gathering on users?
So that SA subdomain that they have is really interesting. And there was a lot of investigation done by the reporter to which I whistleblow the issue. There's a company called Sensor Analytics in China and a lot of the API calls inside the code are named Sensor Analytics API, Sensor Analytics this, Sensor Analytics that.
Which is the company you mentioned, right?
Yes. So there's a pretty strong correlation between that analytics company and Xiaomi and other, let's say, actors in the Xiaomi board that have a lot of interest into companies that sell metadata, like browsing behaviors of users in general.
I see. And
so I think
is
they
this the
are
only company you
monetizing.
know about, or do you see like other companies like Sensor Analytics so far? Because like, I would assume they have a website and everything, right?
Yeah. They have a website, and where they kind of advertise things like this.
I'm trying to find it actually. China is using AI. Oh, Al Jazeera is blocked here. Are they based in China or in San Francisco? I see a company, but they're based in San Francisco.
There should be in. So yeah, Sensor Data. It's a Chinese startup called Sensor Analytics.
Okay.
sensor analytics or sensors data. It's a startup. They acquired 44 million in a round led up by a New York equity firm.
Okay.
Xiaomi is listed as a customer on Sensor Data's website. You can find more in
sensorsdata.cn, right? I think that's their website. Yeah. Years of investment.
Yes.
Sector.
Thomas Brewster did some pretty solid
from Forbes,
research on them. Yeah, from Forbes.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Like he's a one-man army at Forbes. Like he's looking at all the stuff and yeah. Okay, I found the website. I will have a look after. Looks pretty good. One more question from the chat actually. So we talked about the Chinese brands and Xiaomi, but what about like Apple? And I guess we can extend it to like Samsung and everything because they're also like Android based. Like, do they do like similar tracking? We don't know.
I haven't seen them doing anything like that. Now with Apple, I don't use Apple devices in general.
Yeah.
But whenever I would do any kind of capture, let's say for work, and just try to see some app traffic, Apple devices are pretty quiet in general. But don't take my word for it. I am just a rookie when it comes to reversing Apple products. Samsung, I haven't seen Samsung sending anything of interest as well, and I have, at least on the browser part. And I think that pixels have been bashed so much by security researchers, and they're just a workhorse that has no secrets right now.
Yeah, no, definitely. It would be interesting actually to compile a list of like data analytics company like in different countries, because at the end of the day, like if we just kind of like look at the software where it goes to, that's one way to look at it. But if you just like make a list of VCs from different country, and like, or even if you just go on Crunchbase for like data analytics and you just kind of narrow down results and see which customers they have, that's also a potential way of finding like similar, because I would assume like they have multiple customers, for instance, that company.
Yeah. Data is the new gold.
Yeah, definitely, especially given the price of oil now.
Yeah.
What about the OnePlus actually?
I never had the OnePlus on my hands, unfortunately. When they were cheap, there was this long queue, and I'm just an impulsive buyer. I just get them on the spot.
Yeah.
And now they're pretty expensive and actually pretty premium. So I never had the chance, unfortunately, to bump my head into one.
Yeah, it's a pretty good research project. If you can buy your device for like £200, you know, like £150, and be able to do research, it's pretty cool. Usually it's like way more. Well, cool. I don't see any more questions. Thanks again for your time, and well, don't leave us since you're gonna be with us on the panel after. Looking forward to that, and